Hi, my name is Lily Hurd, and I would like to talk about how soldiers who fought in the Vietnam War did not stop fighting just because they came home. One thing I know that I was not taught in school was all the things that affected the soldiers and their families after the war. In school, it was mostly focused on what happened during the war more than after. And there are still a lot of soldiers out there fighting to this day. Vietnam veterans battle with psychological problems, and their families struggle with that alongside them, helping them as much as they can. My grandfather was in the Vietnam War, so he's told me many stories, and he has times, such as the 4th of July, when he cannot celebrate because the fireworks take him back to when he was in battle. This made me want to learn more about how it affected others and how, in different ways, honestly, that it affected them. And I want to start by telling you some things my grandfather had told me that he went through personally. My grandfather told me that when he came home from Vietnam, it was not a warm welcome. It was terrible. And people treated them like they were criminals. When he came back, he was spit on, harassed, and denied jobs. Like, people wouldn't even give it a second thought to even consider them working in that establishment, because they all thought they were going to kill him. Which is crazy to think about, because now, when you see a veteran, it doesn't matter what war they fought in, what branch they fought in. When you see a veteran, most people will say thank you for your service. But back then, people thought they went over to Vietnam and just started killing people just because they seen them walking down the street. So they got the label murderers. And it wasn't just the soldiers and my grandfather that went through this. Their families were harassed as well. And with the soldiers not being able to find a job, they had to have somebody else in the family take on that responsibility so that they could provide for the family, and the family could still live and get food and have a house. Now, I want to turn to a study that was conducted by the Centers for Disease Control, and it found that Vietnam veterans were twice as likely to have enduring psychological problems when compared to other military veterans. So that means that when you think about Vietnam and you think about the world wars, there was a study conducted that showed that Vietnam veterans had twice as more psychological problems than what World War veterans had. And family members were affected by this as well, because the war was a very traumatic experience for all parties, including the veterans' families, as stated here. For families of U.S. military veterans, Vietnam was and continues to be a traumatic experience. War trauma can impact families at each state of the family life cycle. And it's not just war trauma as much as it is the neurological problems that come with the war trauma. It can pass down through the generations, like PTSD and coping attempts. They become embedded in the current symptomology of the veteran's marriage and family. And to wrap all this up, the Vietnam War affected soldiers and family members more than the world would have thought. When the soldiers came back from the war, they were spit on, harassed, and denied jobs. It took a very, very long time for people to realize they weren't murderers. They were good people who had been through a lot and did not deserve the hatred they got. All of these things and the things the veterans seen and went through in Vietnam puts them twice as likely to have PTSD and more psychological problems. I hope that from this speech you learned more about the Vietnam veterans' life and the things they went through when they came home.